The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's sky like a dark storm cloud. It was bigger than any city on the planet, casting shadows over the orbital stations that circled above. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the defense station, watching the alien vessel through the large windows. His hands were steady, but his heart beat faster than usual. "Sir, they're sending a message," said Captain Lee Dong-woo from his position at the communication station. His voice was calm, but Kim could hear the tension underneath. "Put it through," Kim ordered. He had been waiting for this day for years. The reports from the outer colonies had been getting worse, ships disappearing, planets going silent. And, always, the same story from the few survivors who escaped. The Galactic Council was coming. The hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. It was tall, made of what looked like living crystal that shifted and changed colors. This was a Vorthak, one of the 12 races that ruled the galaxy through the Galactic Council. When it spoke, its voice sounded like breaking glass. "Humans of Earth," the creature said. "I am Speaker Velthon of the Galactic Council. You have been judged." Dr. Park So-jin stepped forward from where she had been standing quietly. She was the only human who had studied the alien races in detail, and Kim needed her knowledge now more than ever. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp with intelligence. The Vorthak continued speaking. "Your species has spread across 14 star systems in only 200 of your years. This expansion is too fast, too aggressive. You take resources without asking. You build weapons instead of art. You are dangerous to the peace of the galaxy." Kim felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his face calm. Behind him, other officers on the bridge shifted uncomfortably. Captain Lee's hand moved closer to his weapon, though Kim knew it would be useless against the massive ship outside. "The Galactic Council has made a decision," the alien said. "You have 72 standard hours to surrender all military ships, weapons, and defensive systems. Your leaders will come with us for protective custody. Your people will be relocated to safer worlds where they can be properly supervised." The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Protective custody, relocation, supervision. Kim had heard these words before in the reports from other worlds. It meant slavery with prettier names. "What happens if we refuse?" Kim asked, stepping closer to the hologram. The crystal being flickered, and Kim could see what Dr. Park had told him about. This was surprise. In thousands of years, no species had ever asked that question. They had all surrendered immediately when the council arrived. "Refusal is not possible," the Vorthak said finally. "No species refuses the council's protection." "That's not what I asked," Kim said, his voice harder now. "What happens if we say no?" The alien's crystal form pulsed with darker colors. "Then you will be removed for the safety of others. Your worlds will be cleansed. Your species will be recorded as a failed experiment." Kim nodded slowly. He had expected this answer. The council didn't make requests. They made demands. And they had never met a species that didn't bow down in fear. "I need to discuss this with Earth's government," Kim said. "You have 72 hours, the Vorthak replied. "Choose wisely, human. The council's mercy has limits." The hologram disappeared, leaving the bridge in silence. Through the windows, they could see the alien ship beginning to move away from Earth's orbit. It would wait at the edge of the solar system for their answer. Captain Lee was the first to speak. "Sir, what are your orders?" Kim turned to look at his officers. These were good people, trained soldiers who had sworn to protect Earth and all her colonies. They were looking at him now, waiting for him to tell them what to do next. "Dr. Park," he said, "in your studies of the council races, have any of them ever been in a real war?" Park shook her head. "No, sir. They've never faced serious resistance. Most species surrender immediately when they see the size of the council's fleets. The few that tried to fight were destroyed so quickly that there are no records of actual battles." Kim smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted prey. "Captain Lee, send a message to all human colonies and military installations. Use Code 7. Lee's eyes widened. Code 7 was the highest level of military alert, used only when Earth itself was under threat of total destruction. But he didn't question the order. His fingers moved quickly over the controls. "Dr. Park, I need you to contact the research divisions. Tell them we need everything they've been working on, especially the projects they thought were too dangerous to test." "Sir," Park said carefully, "some of those projects If they work, the results could be devastating. Good, Kim said. That's exactly what we need. He walked to the communication station and took the microphone. His voice would now be broadcast to every human ship, station, and colony in space. This is Admiral Kim Tae-ho of Earth Defense Command. As of this moment, we are at war. The Galactic Council has given us 3 days to surrender our freedom or face destruction. We choose neither. He paused, looking out at the stars where human ships were already beginning to move in response to his orders. For 200 years, we have been alone among the stars, building and growing and learning. The Council thinks this makes us weak, that we will surrender like every other species before us. They are wrong. Through the bridge windows, he could see the lights of other stations and ships beginning to move. Across human space, every military vessel was receiving the same orders: prepare for war. The Council has ruled this galaxy for thousands of years through fear. They have never faced an enemy that fights back with everything it has. They have never faced humans. Kim set down the microphone and turned back to his officers. Captain, Lee was coordinating with the fleet commanders. Dr. Park was already contacting the research stations. Everyone was moving with the quick efficiency that made human military forces so effective. Sir, said Commander Hans Subin, the leader of the elite pilot squadron, what should I tell my pilots? Kim looked at her for a long moment. Han was young, maybe 25 years old, but she was one of the best pilots humanity had ever produced. Her squadron flew the newest ships, faster and more deadly than anything the galaxy had seen before. Tell them the truth, Kim said. Tell them that we're about to fight the biggest war in galactic history. Tell them that the odds are against us, that the enemy has more ships, more weapons, more experience. Tell them that we might all die. Han nodded, but she didn't look afraid. If anything, she looked eager. And then tell them, Kim continued, that none of that matters, because we're human, and humans don't surrender. We don't kneel, and we don't go quietly into the dark. As the alien ship disappeared from Earth's sky, heading back to report to its masters, Kim felt a strange calm settle over him. The Council thought they were dealing with just another primitive species that would beg for mercy when faced with superior force. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The war for humanity's freedom was about to begin. The silence across human space was deafening. Where once busy shipping lanes had been filled with cargo vessels and passenger ships, now there was only empty darkness. The Galactic Council's scout ships, sent ahead to monitor human activity before the main fleet arrived, found nothing where they expected to see panic and surrender. General Choi Min-ho stood in the command center on Mars, watching the tactical displays that showed the positions of every human military asset. What the aliens couldn't see was that the ships hadn't disappeared. They had hidden. Every vessel, from massive battleships to tiny fighters, was tucked away in asteroid fields, behind moons, or powered down in the cold darkness between planets. General, we're receiving reports from all sectors, said his aide, Lieutenant Yoon Bo-ram. The evacuation is complete. All civilian populations have been moved to the inner system bunkers. Choi nodded grimly. They had practiced this scenario for decades, ever since the first reports of the Galactic Council had reached Earth. While other species built monuments and art, humans built bunkers and backup plans. Every colony had underground shelters that could survive for years. Every civilian knew exactly where to go when the alarm sounded. What about the Council's advanced scouts? Choi asked. They're exactly where Captain Lee predicted they would be, Lieutenant Yoon replied. 12 ships, spread out across the outer system. They think they're hidden, but our sensors are tracking all of them. At that moment, Captain Lee Dong-woo was aboard his ship, the Soul's Vengeance, drifting silently in the shadow of a large asteroid. His vessel was one of humanity's newest designs, built with technology that the Council had never seen before. Where alien ships relied on energy, shields, and plasma weapons, human engineers had focused on stealth and raw firepower. Captain, whispered his navigation officer, Ensign Kim Da-yeon, the Council scout is passing within 50 kilometers of our position. Lee watched the alien ship on his screens. It was sleek and beautiful, covered in the kind of energy fields that made it nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. Nearly, but not completely. Not yet, Lee said quietly. Let them think they're safe. Far below on Earth's surface, engineer Yoon Ji-woo was putting the finishing touches on humanity's greatest secret. In hidden facilities built deep underground, she had been working for years on weapons that should have been impossible. The Council's technology was based on energy manipulation, shields, plasma cannons, force fields. Human technology was based on something much simpler and more deadly: physics. "The mass drivers are ready," she reported to Admiral Kim over the secure communication channel. "All fusion warheads are armed and waiting. The railgun satellites are in position." Admiral Kim, still on the orbital defense station, felt a cold satisfaction as he received the reports. The Council expected to find a primitive species with basic weapons. Instead, they would face an enemy that had turned the laws of physics into weapons of war. "Dr. Park," he said, turning to the xenobiologist, "what can you tell me about the main fleet's approach?" Dr. Park So-jin looked up from her analysis screens. She had been studying every piece of data they could gather about the approaching Council armada. What she had found was both terrifying and encouraging. "They're coming in the standard Council formation," she said. 3,000 ships in a tight group, with their most powerful vessels in the center. It's the same formation they've used for centuries because it's never failed them. "And why is that encouraging?" asked Kim. "Because it means they're not expecting a real fight," Park replied. "This formation is designed to intimidate, not to fight. Their ships are clustered together to look more impressive, but that makes them vulnerable to area effect weapons." Kim smiled. Engineer Yoon's fusion warheads were exactly that kind of weapon. Commander Han Soo-bin was briefing her pilots in the hidden base on Luna. The Ghost Squadron, as they were known, consisted of the best pilots humanity had ever produced. Their ships were small, fast, and packed with more firepower than vessels twice their size. "Listen carefully," Han told her squadron. "The aliens have never seen ships like ours. They've never faced tactics like ours. Their shields can stop energy weapons, but they can't stop a ship moving at full speed with a fusion warhead attached." One of her pilots, Lieutenant Park Min-soo, raised his hand. "Commander, are you saying we're going to ram them?" "If necessary," Han replied without hesitation. "The Council thinks war is about who has the biggest ships and the most advanced shields. They're about to learn that war is about who's willing to do whatever it takes to win." The pilots nodded. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing that many of them might not return. But they also knew that if they failed, humanity would cease to exist. Back on Mars, General Choi was coordinating the ground defenses. Every human world was now a fortress, protected by weapons that the Council couldn't detect until it was too late. Hidden beneath cities and farms were missile silos, fusion reactors converted into massive laser cannons, and defensive systems that could turn entire planets into weapons. "Sir," Lieutenant Yoon said, "we're getting reports from the long-range sensors. The Council's main fleet has entered the outer system." Choi looked at the tactical display. 3,000 ships, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. If this were a conventional battle, humanity would lose in minutes. But this wouldn't be a conventional battle. "Send the signal to all units," he ordered. "Operation Prometheus is now active." Across human space, hidden ships began to power up their engines. Weapon systems that had been waiting in silence started their activation sequences. And in the deep space between planets, Captain Lee prepared to fire the first shot of the war. "Captain," Ensign Kim said quietly, "the Council scout is directly ahead. All weapons are ready." Lee looked at his crew. These men and women had trained for this moment their entire careers. They knew that the next few hours would determine whether humanity remained free or became another entry in the Council's list of conquered species. "Fire!" he ordered. The Soul's Vengeance launched a single torpedo, moving silently through space toward the alien scout ship. It wasn't an energy weapon that the alien shields could deflect. It was a simple nuclear warhead moving at incredible speed, guided by human ingenuity and determination. The Council scout never saw it coming. One moment it was scanning the empty space around Mars, and the next moment it was an expanding cloud of radioactive gas. "Direct hit," reported the weapons officer. "Target destroyed." But Captain Lee wasn't celebrating yet. He knew that the real battle was just beginning. The Council's main fleet would reach Earth in less than 18 hours, and when they arrived, they would be expecting to find a defeated enemy begging for mercy. Instead, They would find 3 billion humans who had just declared war on the galaxy. Admiral Kim received the confirmation that the first council ship had been destroyed. Around him, his officers worked with calm efficiency, preparing for the largest space battle in human history. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, facing an enemy with technology that was centuries ahead of their own, and none of them looked afraid. "Dr. Park," Kim said, "send a message to the council fleet." "What should it say, sir?" Kim looked out at the stars, where somewhere in the darkness, 3,000 alien ships were heading toward Earth with the intention of enslaving or destroying every human being in the galaxy. "Tell them that their scout ship was just the beginning," he said. "Tell them that if they want Earth, they'll have to take it from us. And tell them that we're ready to show them exactly how dangerous humans can be when they're fighting for their freedom." The message was sent, racing through space toward the approaching council fleet. Kim knew it would reach them in a few hours, just as they were preparing for what they thought would be an easy victory. He hoped they would enjoy the surprise. The asteroid belt had never been a battlefield before. For millions of years, it had been nothing but rocks and ice, floating silently in the darkness between Mars and Jupiter. Now, as the Galactic Council's massive fleet approached, it was about to become the graveyard of galactic supremacy. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the orbital command station, watching the tactical displays show the enemy fleet's approach. 3,000 ships, arranged in the traditional council formation that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met an enemy that could hurt them. "Admiral," reported Captain Lee Dong-woo, from his position aboard the Soul's Vengeance, hidden deep within the asteroid field, "the council fleet is entering the belt. They're maintaining formation and speed. No sign they suspect anything." Kim nodded. The council's arrogance was their weakness. They had ruled for so long without opposition that they couldn't imagine a species that would dare to fight back. "All units, this is Admiral Kim," he broadcast on the secure channel. "Remember, we only get one chance at this. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and then get out. Make every shot count." In the asteroid field, Captain Bae Jin-woo adjusted the controls of his ship, the Busan's Hammer. It looked like an ordinary mining vessel, the kind used to extract metals from asteroids. The Council scouts had seen dozens of ships like it and dismissed them as harmless civilian craft. They had no idea that engineer Yoon Ji-woo had converted every mining ship in the belt into a weapon of war. "Hammer 1 to all mining vessels," Bae transmitted. "Payloads are loaded and ready. Remember, we're not miners today. We're artillery." The payloads were chunks of refined metal, each one weighing several tons and accelerated to incredible speeds by the same magnetic systems used for mining operations. When they hit something at those velocities, the results would be devastating. Pilot. Oh Hye-jin was strapped into the cockpit of her fighter, waiting in the shadow of a large asteroid. Around her, the rest of Ghost Squadron sat in similar hiding places, their ships powered down to avoid detection. Each fighter carried a single fusion warhead, small but incredibly powerful. "Ghost leader to all pilots," she transmitted on the squadron frequency. "Remember the plan. We go in fast, we hit them where it hurts, and we don't stop until they're running or dead." The Council fleet continued its approach, confident and unstoppable. At the center of the formation, the command ships of the 12 races moved in perfect order. The Vorthak crystal ships pulsed with energy. The Kalani bioships writhed like living creatures. The Mordith war platforms bristled with weapons that could destroy planets. They had conquered 1,000 worlds with this fleet. Today, they expected to conquer one more. "Enemy fleet is now within range," reported the weapons officer on Kim's command station. "All units report ready." Kim looked at the display one more time. In a few minutes, humanity would either strike a blow for freedom or die trying. There was no middle ground, no possibility of surrender. The Council had made that clear. "All units," he said calmly, "execute Operation Prometheus." The asteroid belt exploded into violence. Captain Lee's stealth ships struck first, appearing from nowhere like ghosts materializing in space. The Soul's Vengeance and its sister ships launched their nuclear torpedoes at point-blank range, targeting the Council's command vessels. The aliens' energy shields, designed to deflect plasma and laser fire, were useless against the raw physics of nuclear fusion. The first Council ships died in balls of atomic fire. Direct hits on 3 command vessels, Lee reported, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around him. Moving to secondary targets. But the real surprise came when Captain Bay's mining ships revealed their true nature. The Council had ignored them completely, dismissing them as civilian vessels fleeing the battle. Instead, they opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed. The magnetic launchers that had once moved asteroid chunks for mining now hurled refined metal projectiles at nearly the speed of light. The chunks of iron and nickel hit the Council ships like the fist of an angry god, punching through energy shields and armor plating as if they were made of paper. Hammer 1. Direct hit on enemy cruiser, Bay reported with satisfaction. Target is breaking apart. The Council fleet, which had been moving in perfect formation just moments before, suddenly found itself under attack from enemies that appeared to be everywhere at once. Ships that should have been harmless were destroying their most powerful vessels. Weapons that should have been impossible were tearing through their defenses. Then Ghost Squadron joined the battle. Oh Hee-jin led her fighters in a diving attack on the Council's capital ships, their small craft moving so fast that the alien targeting systems couldn't track them. But instead of trying to dogfight with the massive enemy vessels, the human pilots did something no Council tactician had ever imagined. They turned their fighters into guided missiles. Ghost 2, beginning attack run on the Vorthak flagship, transmitted Lieutenant Park Min-soo as his fighter screamed toward the crystalline command ship. It's been an honor serving with you all. His fighter, loaded with a fusion warhead and moving at maximum speed, struck the alien flagship just as the warhead detonated. The explosion was visible from Mars, a new star briefly born in the darkness of space. The psychological impact on the Council forces was immediate and devastating. In their thousands of years of rule, they had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice individual lives for victory. The concept was so alien to their way of thinking that many commanders simply couldn't process what they were seeing. Council fleet is breaking formation, reported Dr. Park So-jin from her analysis station. They're trying to retreat from the asteroid field, but Engineer Yoon's surprises weren't finished yet. Hidden throughout the belt were fusion mines, disguised as ordinary asteroids. As the Council ships tried to flee, they found themselves flying through a maze of nuclear fire. Captain Bay watched through his ship's cameras as alien vessels tried desperately to escape the death trap the asteroid belt had become. Some made it through, damaged and demoralized. Others weren't so lucky. Confirmed kills on 47 Council vessels, he reported. Many more damaged. They're retreating toward the outer system. But the victory had come at a cost. Of the 50 human ships that had participated in the ambush, only 32 remained operational. Ghost Squadron had been reduced to just 6 fighters. The mining vessels had taken heavy damage from return fire. Admiral Kim watched the tactical display as the surviving Council ships regrouped beyond the asteroid belt. They had lost nearly 800 vessels in 6 hours, more than they had lost in the previous 1,000 years combined. For the first time in galactic history, the Council's fleet had been bloodied. Admiral, Captain Lee's voice came through the communication system. The enemy is regrouping. They're not retreating from the system. I think they're preparing for another attack. Kim nodded. He had expected this. The Council couldn't afford to lose to a species they considered primitive. Their entire authority depended on their reputation for invincibility. All units, fall back to Earth orbit, he ordered. Prepare for the next phase. As the surviving human ships began their withdrawal toward Earth, Kim looked at the damage reports. They had hurt the Council badly, but the enemy still had over 2,000 ships remaining. The odds were still against humanity, but now at least the Council knew they were in a real fight. Dr. Park approached him with a worried expression. Admiral, we are receiving communications from the Council fleet. They're asking for terms. Kim raised an eyebrow. Terms? They want to negotiate a surrender, Park explained. They're offering to let us keep our colonies if we agree to Council oversight. Kim looked at her for a long moment, then began to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound of a predator who had just realized his prey was weaker than expected. Send them a message, Doctor, he said. Tell them that we already gave them our terms back at Earth. We don't kneel, we don't surrender, and we're just getting started. As the message was transmitted toward the Council fleet, Kim turned back to the tactical displays. The Battle of the Asteroid Belt was over. But the war for humanity's freedom had only begun. And judging by what he had seen today, the Council was about to learn exactly why they should have left humanity alone. The galaxy's eternal rulers had just discovered that humans fight harder when the odds are against them. The Council fleet had regrouped beyond the orbit of Mars, licking its wounds and trying to understand what had just happened. For the first time in galactic history, they had been hurt. Badly hurt. But as they prepared for their final assault, on Earth, they discovered that humanity's greatest secret wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It was that they were not alone. Ambassador Shin Kyung-min had been humanity's best-kept secret for 30 years. While the Council believed humans were isolated and friendless, she had been traveling quietly through the galaxy, making contact with species that the Council had pacified, a polite word for enslaved. Now, as the Council fleet moved toward Earth for what they thought would be the final battle, ships began appearing throughout the galaxy. Not human ships, but vessels belonging to species that had been forced to kneel to the Council centuries ago. Captain Ryu Sang-wook stood on the bridge of his ship, the Incheon's Pride, watching as dozens of alien vessels took formation around him. They were an odd mix. Althari quick-strike ships, Corvin industrial haulers, Zalani exploration vessels, and ships from a dozen other species that the Council thought they had broken. "Captain," said his communications officer, Ensign Lee Ji-hai, "we're receiving confirmation from all Allied fleets. The Althari 3rd Squadron reports ready. The Corvin Mining Guild is in position. The Zalani scouts have marked their targets." Ryu nodded. These weren't military ships in the traditional sense. The Council had forbidden their subject species from building real warships, but Ambassador Shin and her team had spent years showing these species how to turn civilian vessels into weapons using human technology and tactics. The Althari were natural pilots, small and quick with reflexes that put even human aces to shame. Their merchant ships had been quietly modified with human fusion bombs, turning each vessel into a deadly missile that could strike faster than anything the Council had ever seen. The Corvin were builders, their entire species dedicated to industry and construction. They had used their massive cargo haulers to mass-produce human weapon designs, turning their ships into floating arsenals that could supply an entire fleet. The Zalani were explorers and scientists, but they had learned from human engineers how to turn their sensor arrays into weapons, creating ships that could jam Council communications and target their enemies with deadly precision. "All ships," Ryu broadcast on the Allied frequency, "this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Today we fight not just for humanity, but for every species that has been forced to bow before the Council. Today we show them that the age of their rule is over." On Earth, Admiral Kim received the reports from across the galaxy with quiet satisfaction. The Council had always ruled through fear, convincing each species that they were alone and helpless. But humanity had shown them something different, that unity was stronger than submission. "Dr. Park," he said, "what's the status of our planetary defenses?" Dr. Park So-jin looked up from her displays, her face grim but determined. "All systems are online, Admiral. Engineer Yoon's modifications are ready. Earth is as prepared as we can make it." The preparations had taken years. While the Council thought Earth was just another primitive world, Engineer Yoon Ji-woo had been quietly turning the entire planet into a weapon. Hidden beneath cities and farms were mass drivers that could launch projectiles into space. Fusion reactors had been converted into massive laser arrays, and beneath the surface of the moon, something called the Zeus Array waited in silence. "Admiral," Captain Lee's voice came through the communication system from his position in the outer system. "Council fleet is beginning its final approach. They're bringing everything they have left." Kim looked at the tactical display. Over 2,000 Council ships were moving toward Earth in a formation designed to overwhelm any defense. They had learned from their defeat in the asteroid belt. This time, they were spread out, moving carefully, ready for anything humanity could throw at them, or so they thought. "All units," Kim broadcast, "this is it. Everything we've worked for, everything we've prepared for, comes down to the next few hours. Remember what we're fighting for. Remember who we are. We are human, and we do not surrender." The Council fleet approached Earth like a storm of metal and energy, their ships bristling with weapons that could destroy continents. At their head flew the surviving command vessels of the 12 races, their leaders determined to end this rebellion once and for all. But as they reached the orbit of Luna, space around them suddenly filled with ships that shouldn't have been there. Captain Ryu's allied fleet struck from every direction at once. Althari fighters, moving faster than anything the Council had ever encountered, screamed through the enemy formation with fusion bombs strapped to their hulls. Corvan cargo ships opened their holds to reveal missile batteries built from human designs. Zalani scout ships used their enhanced sensors to guide the attacks with deadly precision. The Council fleet, which had been expecting to face only the remaining human forces, suddenly found itself under attack by species they thought they had conquered forever. "Council ship Mordeth Prime, this is Captain Yalu of the Althari 3rd Squadron," came a transmission on the open channel. "My people have been slaves for 300 years. Today we remember what it means to be free." The Althari ship, no larger than a human fighter, slammed into the massive Council dreadnought with its fusion warhead armed. The explosion tore through the alien vessel's hull, sending it spinning out of control. But the real shock came when the civilian vessels began, revealing their true nature. The Corvan ships, which looked like simple cargo haulers, opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed. The Zalani exploration vessels used their scientific equipment to jam Council communications and targeting systems. "This is impossible," transmitted the Council's supreme commander, a Vorthak called Crystal Singer Thalmeth. "These species are pacified. They have no military forces." "They didn't," came a reply from Captain Ryu, "until we taught them how to fight." The battle raged through Earth's outer system as the Allied fleets struck again and again at the Council forces. The aliens, trained to fight primitive species with basic weapons, found themselves facing tactics they had never encountered before. When Althari fighters ran out of ammunition, they used their ships as weapons, ramming into Council vessels with suicidal determination. When Corvan cargo ships were damaged, they turned themselves into bombs, taking enemy ships with them. When Zalani scouts were cornered, they used their sensor arrays to blind entire enemy squadrons. "Admiral," Dr. Park reported from Earth, "the Allied fleets have destroyed over 300 Council ships, but they're taking heavy losses. The enemy is still pushing toward Earth." Kim nodded. He had expected this. The Allied fleets were brave and determined, but they were still outnumbered and outgunned. The real battle would be at Earth itself. "Activate the planetary defenses," he ordered. Engineer Yoon's hidden weapons systems came online all across Earth's surface. Mass drivers built into mountains began launching tungsten rods at near-light speed toward the approaching Council fleet. Fusion reactors converted into laser arrays sent beams of concentrated energy across space. Orbital platforms that had been disguised as communications satellites revealed themselves to be weapon platforms. But the Council fleet kept coming. They had lost too much to retreat now. Their reputation, their authority, their entire way of life depended on crushing this rebellion. As the first Council ships entered Earth's atmosphere, the final phase of the battle began. The Zeus array, Engineer Yoon's most dangerous creation, powered up for the first time. Hidden across Earth's surface, fusion reactors began working together to create something that shouldn't have been possible. A gravitational lens that could focus the sun's energy into a weapon that could reach across space. "Zeus array is online," Engineer Yoon reported, her voice tense with excitement and fear. "Targeting the Council flagship." The beam that erupted from Earth was like the light of creation itself. It reached across space in an instant, striking the Council's command ship with the focused power of a star. The massive vessel, which had survived 1,000 battles across the galaxy, simply ceased to exist. The psychological impact was immediate. The Council forces, already demoralized by the unexpected resistance and the loss of so many ships, began to break apart. Some ships tried to retreat. Others continued their attack with desperate fury. A few simply stopped moving, their crews too shocked to respond. Captain Lee, leading the surviving human fleet in one final charge, watched as space around Earth became a graveyard of galactic ambitions. "All human ships," he transmitted. "This is our moment. Finish them." The remaining human vessels, supported by what was left of the Allied fleets, swept through the broken Council formation like avenging angels. Ship after ship fell to human weapons and alien determination. When the battle finally ended, less than 300 Council ships remained functional out of the 3,000 that had begun the assault. They hung in space around Earth, their crews stunned and defeated. Admiral Kim's final transmission reached every ship in the system, human and alien alike. "The Galactic Council is dissolved," he said, his voice carrying across space to every corner of the galaxy. "Any species that wishes freedom may claim it." The silence that followed the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. For thousands of years, the great chambers of the Galactic Council had echoed with the voices of alien rulers making decisions that affected billions of lives across countless worlds. Now those chambers stood empty, their crystal walls reflecting nothing but darkness and defeat. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood in his office aboard the orbital defense station, looking down at Earth through the large windows. The planet showed scars from the battle: burning cities, damaged orbital platforms, and the glowing craters where Council ships had crashed. But it was still free, still human, still defiant. "Admiral," Captain Lee Dong-woo entered the office, his uniform torn and dirty from 18 hours of continuous battle. "The final count is in. We lost 43 ships and over 8,000 personnel. The Allied fleets lost even more." Kim nodded slowly. The price of freedom had been high, but not as high as it could have been. "And the Council forces?" 297 ships managed to escape the system, Lee reported. "They're scattered across the galaxy, trying to reach safe ports. Most of their command structure is gone. The survivors are calling for individual ceasefires." Kim turned from the window to face his captain. Lee looked older than he had just days ago, aged by the weight of command and the horror of war. "They all did. No ceasefires," Kim said firmly. "The Council chose this fight. They declared war on humanity and our allies. Now they get to live with the consequences." Dr. Park So-jin entered the office, carrying a data pad filled with reports from across the galaxy. Her face showed exhaustion, but also something that might have been hope. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from dozens of worlds," she said. "Species that have been under Council rule for centuries are declaring independence. The Kithara system has thrown out their Council governors. The Milani colonies are refusing to send tribute ships. It's happening everywhere." Kim felt a grim satisfaction. This was what they had really been fighting for. Not just Earth's freedom, but the freedom of every species that had been forced to bow before the Council's power. "What about the 12 core races?" he asked. "The original Council members?" Park's expression grew more serious. "That's where it gets complicated. The Vorthak are trying to maintain control of their home systems, but they've lost most of their fleet. The Kalani are in full retreat to their bio-worlds. The Mordith—" She paused. "The Mordith are asking to negotiate." "Let them ask," Kim said coldly. "We're not interested in negotiations with slavers." Engineer Yoon Ji-woo appeared in the doorway, her hands still dirty from working on damaged systems. The Zeus array had worked perfectly, but the strain of channeling, stellar energy had burned out half the focusing equipment on Earth's surface. "Admiral, I've been monitoring Council military frequencies," she said. "Their remaining commanders are completely lost. They don't know how to function without the central authority. Some are trying to set up local governments. Others are just running." Kim walked back to the window, watching as human ships moved through Earth's orbital space. But these weren't all human vessels anymore. Mixed in with them were ships from a dozen allied species, their crews working together to clear the wreckage and begin repairs. 6 months later, Ambassador Shin Kyung-min stood before the first free species assembly, held in a simple auditorium on a human orbital station rather than the crystal palaces where the Council had once ruled. Representatives from over 50 worlds had come to participate in something the galaxy had never seen before, a government based on choice rather than force. "We gather here not as conquerors or rulers," Shin said to the assembled delegates, "but as equals. The age of the Galactic Council is over. What we build next will be our choice, all of our choices made together." The Althari representative, a small, quick-moving being named Swiftwing Kala, stood to speak. For 300 years, my people forgot what it meant to fly free. The humans reminded us. Today, we choose our own path. The Corvan delegate, a massive creature called Builder Prime Kenth, rumbled his agreement. The humans showed us that construction can be creation, not just service. Our ships will build for ourselves now, not for masters. One by one, the representatives spoke. Each had a story of oppression, of forced submission, of centuries spent believing they had no choice. And each now spoke of freedom, of the chance to determine their own destiny. Dr. Park, now serving as humanity's chief xenobiologist and cultural advisor, watched from the observation gallery. She had spent years studying the psychology of the council races, but now she was learning something new, how species that had been broken for centuries could heal and grow strong again. "It's remarkable," she said to Captain Ryu, who was sitting beside her. 6 months ago, most of these species couldn't imagine defying the council. Now they're planning their own futures. Ryu nodded. His ship, the Inchen's Pride, now served as a training vessel, teaching former subject species how to defend themselves. The human military was sharing everything, weapons technology, tactics, ship designs, with anyone who wanted to learn. "That's what freedom does," he said. "Once you taste it, you can't go back to slavery." Not everyone was happy with the new order. On the edges of known space, some of the surviving council forces were trying to rebuild their power. The Vorthak had established a true council in their home system, claiming authority over any species that would still listen. A few worlds, afraid of chaos and change, had actually asked for the council's protection, but these were the exceptions. Most of the galaxy was embracing its newfound freedom with enthusiasm that surprised even the humans who had made it possible. Engineer. Yoon was now working on something she called defense networks, allowing allied worlds to share technology and coordinate their defenses without giving up their independence. No single species would ever again have the power to dominate the galaxy. Admiral Kim had retired from active duty, but he still served as an advisor to Earth's government and the Free Species Assembly. He spent his days tending a small garden in his home outside Seoul, where flowers from a dozen different worlds grew side by side. Captain Lee had been promoted to admiral and now commanded the joint human-alien fleet that protected the new free worlds. His ships patrolled the trade routes, not as enforcers but as protectors, ensuring that no species could prey on another. Commander Han Subin, the former Ghost Squadron leader, now ran the military academy where pilots from across the galaxy came to learn human tactics and fighting spirit. Her students included Althari aces, Corvan bomber crews, and even some former council pilots who had defected during the war. 1 year after the battle, Kim stood in his garden, watching Earth's sun set behind the mountains. The planet still bore scars from the war, memorials to the dead, rebuilt cities, and the massive crater where the Zeus array had been. But it was healing, growing stronger. "Admiral," a voice said behind him. He turned to see Dr. Park approaching, carrying a data pad as always. "I thought you'd want to see this. It's a report from the Outer Rim territories." Kim took the pad and read. The last of the true council forces had been defeated by a coalition of Cathara and Melanie ships, using tactics learned from human instructors. The Vorthak leadership had finally accepted that their time as galactic rulers was over. "It's finished then," Kim said quietly. "The fighting is," Park agreed. "But what we built is just beginning. 300 new worlds have applied to join the Free Species Assembly. Trade is flowing again, but now it's voluntary. And there are reports of exploration missions heading toward the Galactic Rim, places the Council never bothered to explore." Kim smiled, the first genuinely happy expression he'd worn since before the war. "And Earth?" "Earth is what it always was," Park said. "Home. But now it's also something more. It's the place where the galaxy learned that freedom is possible." As the stars came out above them, Kim could see ships moving between Earth and its neighbors, human vessels, Althari couriers, Corvan freight haulers, and ships from species he was still learning about. The galaxy was alive again, growing and changing and exploring, free to become whatever its people chose to make it. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of free stars had begun. In the distance, Kim could hear the sound of children playing in the rebuilt cities below. human children, but also young Althari learning to fly, Corvin offspring practicing their building skills, and Zalani scouts preparing for their first exploration missions. They were growing up in a galaxy where they could choose their own destinies, where no authority could tell them to kneel. That, Kim thought as he returned to his garden, was worth every battle they had fought.